It was my privilege to listen to that beautiful discussion on the Bhagavad Gita, uh, I'm always interested when people talk about chapter six, because chapter six is the way where Swami talks about life, and Yomam Pashyati is in fact the crux of the Gita and Indian life, right? Those who see me in the world and who see the world in me, I protect them. And of course, just to paraphrase the last quote that was made, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, meaning uh, the accompaniment of knowledge and wisdom. Uh, I think the people who translated that in that particular thing did not use the word Vinaya. The word Vinaya is actually humility. And that is indeed the Indian approach to knowledge and lifestyle. We don't put down anything. We accept everything if the truth is present in it, and it is the way we do things. Uh, I just wanted to share this particular photograph. If you can see, this is Swami Vivekananda in Chennai. And one second. And Vivekananda's saying from the Kathopanishad, Uttishta Jagrata Prapya Varannigo Bodhata, arise awake, that many of us are familiar with. His while Calcutta versus and West Bengal versus Janmabhoomi, his karma started in Tamil Nadu. In fact, when he came back from Chicago, he was received by the Maharaja Setupati of Ramanathapuram at the particular place. And even today, the rock that he did meditation is now a world famous monument called the Vivekananda Rock. So I just wanted to sort of bring in this relationship. And I know that we are in the throes of the Mahakumbh, and it's important to understand that where our ancients lived and their connection lives on through the scriptures, through their science, through their works. While the purpose of the Indian life was dharma, we understood that the sharira or our body is the way to dharma. Sharira madhyam kalu dharma sadhanam. Many of you must have seen this in the as a motto that the All India Institute of Medical Sciences even carries today, right? So while we have dismissed our ancient lifestyles and ways as, to put it bluntly, mixopathy, the rest of the world has woken up to our ways of life. This is the current global market, a $4.5 trillion market that is predominantly built on adapting our way of life. If you look at this carefully, whether these are various different kinds of yogas, various kinds of food, various kinds of fasting, you will see that we have done this before. While we call it a lifestyle, they call it science. And whether I'm not going to get into a discussion on whether our ancients knew the science. I think our ancients were aligned with nature and understood the need to be aligned with nature and developed a lifestyle that was aligned with it. And that is all there is. Today, we need, they took a leap of faith based on what they observed. Today, we need validation for it. Let me drive this home a little more carefully. Look at this one. Cardiac coherence is the new turmeric latte. Our own remedies with turmeric, ginger, and milk is now a Starbucks bestseller, right? And I like this particular tweet that said how the West works. Steal knowledge from ancient Indian cultures, rename it, claim it as your intervention, attack native tradition as superstition. But I don't blame them, I blame us. because we have fallen for this. We have not looked at the fact that the Madhava School of Mathematics had found Fibonacci sequence much earlier than Fibonacci itself. That the Gregorian calendar is curiously aligned to the Shaiva Siddhanta, the Surya Siddhanta findings. That we actually knew that the time it takes for the light of the sun to come to the earth. We just dismissed it in our need to disown ourselves from our past. But whether you like it or not, every member of your family is at least taking one Ayurvedic product. This is the projected growth of Ayurveda market, and therefore, this is something that we can't live without. Just to finish the pranayama story, this is the global evidence that is accumulating for pranayama. This is a fantastic article that was published in Frontiers a couple of years ago that looks at both an fMRI as well as an anxiety and emotional scores based on pranayama, showing significant improvement in patients with anxiety because of pranayama, but also mapping their fMRI. This is the need of the hour. We need to start looking at our ancient practices, and instead of ditching them, align them with modern science, align them with modern tools, and learn how to go with it. Let me tell you a couple of things from my own journey, and I'll bring this thing in. This is the Aruna Prashna. I've talked about many of you have heard me talk about circadian rhythm. This is the Aruna Prashna, and it talks about Sarvasva Dhanu Bhuvanadihi Tasyaha Paka Visheshanaha Smritam Kala Visheshanam. Very interesting. When I first used this, I did not understand this particular prashna. It says that the course of time that is understood through the changes brought by the heat and those of the rays of the sun. My interest in circadian rhythms is well known to people. But I've always wondered, we have light impulses that hit the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Why is the Aruna Prashna talking about heat? But now we know, and since 2018 we know, that the heat receptors, sensors in our skin, have suprachiasmatic projections. So clearly, whether they knew about the existence of the receptors or not, the prashna is not wrong. It's actually right. And we are seeing these validations over time and again. Where else do we see this more than understanding the cosmic rhythm that we are part of? This is the wording that is there in CERN. Every subatomic particle is not only performs an energy dance, but also is an energy dance. A pulsating process of creation and destruction without end. For the modern physicists, then, Shiva's dance is the dance of subatomic matter. As in Hindu mythology, it is a continual dance of creation and destruction, involving the whole cosmos, the basis of all existence and all natural phenomena. It's very interesting that for millennia, the Orion constellation has been used to measure time. There are many people who still think that the Gregorian calendar is flawed, and we should go back to a constellation-based calendar. So tomorrow, when we have Makara Sankranti, it is basically a constellation change. But how many of us know that the Orion constellation is present in almost all civilizations, and Shiva is known as the great hunter? That is why the Rudra Prashna says, Om Namo Bhagavate Rudraya Namaste Rudra Manyuto Deshave Namaha O Namaste Bahubhya Mudate Namaha. Protect us from your arrows. Because Shiva is a great hunter. And this Nataraja icon, which is so popular in Tamil Nadu, and tomorrow, by the way, Arudra Darshana in Chidambaram, it celebrates Nataraja's dance. The Orion constellation with the Arudra Nakshatra is the crest of the Orion constellation. And can you imagine that it is very interesting that Ujjain, which is where Mahakal is situated, was the zero longitude of many years. And Nataraja, if you look at this, the Orion constellation is Arudra. And 1,000 years ago, there was a supernova in the Orion constellation that led to the iconography of Nataraja being very popular in the Chola Empire. But one of the things that we know is this energy sleep cycle, that there is a significant association between light or darkness and production of energy and the rejuvenation of the body. This is the energy sleep cycle. That photosynthesis is associated with light, rejuvenation is associated with dark, and this is hardwired into us. And therefore, we have circadian rhythms. And these circadian rhythms in humans are well known. This is not a talk on circadian rhythms, but what I'm trying to say is that we knew about this. And these circadian rhythms are not just oscillations, but our feeding, our mitochondria, our energy. And remember, two things that our mother gives us, a mitochondria, and she gives us our rhythmic, our gut microbiota. And these are both circadian. There's a mitochondrial expression of mitochondrial rate limiting enzymes are all circadian. So if you're eating in the middle of the night, you're basically working with a mitochondria that's asleep, right? Those enzymes are not expressed. And that's why unusual time and energy leads to problems. But we know that even the gut microbiota are rhythmic, that they oscillate. The gut-brain axis oscillates. It is in sequence with time. There is a rhythm, there is a balance, right? And did the ancients know about it? You bet they did. This is Ayurveda. Remember that we have Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and the variations of this. And of course, most of us make fun of it. But if you look at this carefully, they talk about the diurnal variations of the doshas. Aho is day, Ratri, that is why Aho Ratri. So if you see the morning is Kapha, therefore Danta Sadhana is done in the morning, wake up early in the morning, right? And then you will see eating is higher, is midday. In fact, for those of us who think that these doshas are some cooked up nonsense by Indians, very interesting study that was published some time ago that actually looked at genomic correlates of Prakriti groups, right? That there are genomic signatures of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Just because we don't know enough about them, I think we should not dismiss them. Let me talk to you about something very interesting. So how did the ancients work with the diurnal variations? So they told you to wake up in the morning, right? Certain activities are presented for the day, certain activities are presented for night. They made you eat small amounts. For example, ghee would be taken in the day, but not at night. There was an old saying that even in a Raja's house, you will not get ghee at night. They would take fermented foods in the morning, but not at night. So they would not have dahi at night. So two things were happening, not just at diurnal changes, but also in the seasonal changes. You will find that various places in the Ramayana, various places in our this thing, you would see how the diet changed during the seasons. You ate seasonal food. For example, in Karnataka, you'll find the Avalaki Utsava occurring the next few days, and you'll find that those seasonal feeds were all celebrated. But importantly, during times of the rain, during times of the sun, the food varied, and that is published. Those of you who read the Ashtanga Hridaya, which is probably the closest we have to a more comprehensive text, will understand these. A lot of times, many of us, especially nutritionists, try to take from this, but not the entire thing, and end up creating havoc. But understanding these and then working with it and building it into our learning is probably more important. I'll just show you how this works. Now, you look at the Indian text, Danta Sadhana was very important, very interesting. that there are at least 6 sticks that are prescribed, not only to brush but also to chew, right? And the most common, of course, is neem, right? What we did was look at uh, is there some correlation? We were the first to publish data on gut microbiota and diabetes in India, but I was thinking of something interesting. Let's look at oral microbiota because we had just done some work showing that if you that there is a great amount of periodontitis in diabetes, and just scaling reduced A1C. So I talked to my friend Padma Shrikant, and said, you know what, let's do something interesting. People use a neem stick. Let's see if a neem stick actually reduces changes oral microbiota and reduces inflammation. So we actually had patients, and we gave them a neem stick. We did some things to protect the enamel, because one of the things is that if you use them without an enamel protector, it does destroy the enamel. Many of them actually, it's not just using it; it's also chewing onto it. But what we showed was, and this is Rubini Anbalgan's work, that the phyla that was present in diabetics, right? This had a higher amount of monocyte chemoattractant protein. Over a period of time, from a more parasitic, and this is 3 months later, from a more parasitic way of this thing, you'd find that this is what it is. That the inflammation oral inflammation came down significantly. A change in the Aeromonas aerophila and other bacteria. I don't want to get into the details of this, but just to understand that maybe they were not scientific, but certainly there's a curious alignment to science in this. I'm not going to go too much into it, but let me go on to food a little bit, and of course let's talk about Gita. Fantastic talk that I heard, and the 6th chapter again I think is something that's amazing. And Swami talks about the path to yoga, and he talks about yuktahara viharasya, yukta cheshtasya karmasu, yukta swapnad bodhasya, yogi bhavati dukkha. Meaning, everything in moderation. Right? They don't talk about extremity. That do things in moderation. So it is very interesting that this moderation becomes an important part of life. We have moved away from eating to live to living to eat. We are the only species that eats for pleasure and eats for and kills for pleasure. But the Gita is just an extension of the knowledge of that day, right? We go to the previous stanza. Swami talks about how to eat. He talks about natyasnastu yogastinaha chaikanta manashantaha na chatvis swapnashilasya jagrato naiva charjanaha. The Shatabrahmana talks about this as is well known. If one eats, the food is within one's capacity, then it protects him and it does not hurt. That which is more than the capacity harms him. That which is less does not protect him. Shankara in his Bhashya for this particular verse quotes the yogic shastras. I'm not able to find the original thing, but Shankara is a meticulous source quoter. So he says, how do you eat? And that's the thing on the right side. He says, half of the stomach, ardha sabhya jhananasya, tritiyam udakam cha, vayo sancharanitu, chaturtam avaishyaseshat. Meaning, drink water. There must be a third of your stomach should be water. Drink water first. The person who drinks water before food is a yogi. The one who drinks between madhye is a bhogi, and one who eats after is a rogi. So a quarter of your stomach should be water. Half of your stomach should be food, and a quarter of it should be empty for air to circulate. Right? I remember my grandfather saying, when you eat, get up when you know that there is space for one more meal. Fantastic. Right? And this moderation, the amount of food that you eat. And remember that they would not eat food without offering. So the food was chishtaha. And there are only two offering mantras in the morning, Satyam Tattvena Parishinchami, and in the evening, Ritam Tattvena Parishinchami. So clearly, they only eat twice a day. And remember, I talked about the circadian rhythms. They would eat before sundown. That evening mantra, Sandhya, sleep. In fact, in the Mahabharata, it is very interesting that when the Pandavas went before they met Draupadi, when they were staying in the house of the Brahmana, they would bring the evening food, they would eat. Then when the sun goes down, they would put the mattresses and they would lie down. And they would tell the stories of the day and they would fall asleep. So early, and 6 to 7 hours of sleep was what they got, but they would get up very early in the morning. Brahma muhurtaya uttasya. Get up in the morning, think about your life, is what the Ashtanga Hridayam says. Manu says, Brahma muhurtaya uttishte, chintaya atmahitam. So think about what is good for your soul. But remember, what is good for your soul necessarily needs to be good for your body. So this is what the Gita says. Look at what Charaka, the importance of sleep. I always say sex is overrated and sleep is underrated. Charaka Samhita talks about sleep. Nidrayattam sukham dukkham, pushtik karshyam bhalavalam, vrishta klibata jnanam ajnanam jivitam nacha. Happiness, misery, nourishment, emaciation, strength, weakness, virility, sterility, knowledge, ignorance, life and death, all these occur depending on the proper and improper sleep. And why is that? We never knew why sleep was important for many years, until this fantastic experiment by Husserl et al. That showed, and she did some great work. She actually had a rat to sleep under a confocal microscope. And she showed that during sleep that your brain shrinks to a third of its size, allowing the CSF to go down deep and clean it up. No wonder the Ratri Suktam talks about sleep as no adhyayasya vayam yavan vikshamahi vrikshena vasanti vayaha. The night gives us her time for us to rest, even as the tree offers its expansive branches for the birds to rest. Right? And I talked about it. The time to rejuvenate for mitophagy, for that, the need for a fasted, non-food available time to rejuvenate. I'm going to stop here, but because I think I've given you a little glimpse into this. I'm happy to take questions and join a discussion. I want to paraphrase Kalidasa. Where would we go without Kalidasa? Purana mityevana sadhu sadvamna chapi kavyam nava mitya vadhyam santap parikshan yastarat bhajante muda parapratyena ye buddhihi. Meaning, don't think that everything old is great and everything new is bad. The wise people examine everything, but the fool listens to other people. So without listening to me, let me paraphrase this. Nava ityevana sadhu sarvam na chapi kavyam purana ityavadvayam. Meaning, don't think all that is new is great and all that is old is bad. Even with this, examine what is good for you and don't just listen to what Krishna Seshadri says. Finally, let me stop being Arudra tomorrow. The source of all movement, Shiva's dance, gives rhythm to the universe. He dances in evil places. In sacred, he creates and preserves, destroys and releases. We are all part of this dance. This eternal rhythm, and woe to us if blinded by illusions, we detach ourselves from the dancing cosmos, the universe in harmony. If anything, the ancients did one thing. They lived in harmony with nature. And I think that's really the message that I want to send. I don't know if you call it science. You can call it by any other name. But certainly, it is a way of life that we should not ignore. Thank you very much.